You see the headlines, you hear the whispers. An impeccable prince, a perfect princess, an unshakable monarchy. But what if it's all a carefully constructed facade? What if, behind the gilded walls of the palace, a silent, brutal war is raging? A war fought not with armies, but with poisonous secrets, elaborate lies, and rumors calculated to destroy the future king. Well, well, well. The masks are off again, aren't they? Just when you thought Meghan Markle couldn't possibly rock the boat any further in the House of Windsor, she proves that chaos is her element. The latest scandal to shake royal circles is nothing more than old rumors, whispered for years about Prince William and Rose Hanbury. And who, you ask, fanned these flames and ensured that the whispers turned into front-page headlines? According to sources close to the situation, it was none other than Meghan herself, allegedly colluding with Harry to leak and fuel the infidelity allegations that have haunted William for years. Yes, Meghan Markle, the self-proclaimed Duchess of Truth, is allegedly pulling the strings behind the ugliest story ever associated with the future King of England. Picture the scene in the hushed, gilded corridors of the palace, where every word is weighed and every gesture analyzed. Someone decides to detonate a bomb. But this time, the bomb isn't an explosive interview or a tell-all memoir. It's something far more insidious. It's poison administered in drops, a rumor allowed to fester in the shadows until it's strong enough to emerge into the light. The official version will claim it was a coincidence, an unfortunate confluence of events. But for many, it's simply the brutal outcome of a silent war marked by love, betrayal, glory, and, above all-consuming envy. The question here is no longer whether the rumor is true. The real question is, who benefits from this conflagration? All eyes, all accusatory fingers point in one direction, toward the woman who, feeling trapped in a golden cage, decided to burn it to the ground. I know what you're thinking. The same old gossip again. But let me tell you, this is different. This isn't just a story of a family feud. It's a chronicle of how a crack became a chasm, how two brothers who were everything to each other now stare at each other from opposite banks of a river of mistrust. Let's untangle this mess, because what seems like simple court gossip is actually the culmination of a modern tragedy, where the heroine, far from being a sad princess, may well be the architect of her own exile and, incidentally, the chaos that surrounds her. The story is not about what happened, but about who instigated it, and that's where things get really dark. To understand the magnitude of this explosion, you have to go back to the moment the match was lit. Because great fires rarely start with a flash, they almost always start with a spark, a careless word in the wrong place. It all started with an allegedly trivial exchange on Twitter, that breeding ground for half-truths and devastating judgments. Giles Coren, a well-known columnist for the prestigious publication The Times, responded to a tweet from his colleague Hatley Freeman with a phrase that would shake the foundations of the monarchy. Yes, it is an affair. I have not read the piece, but I know about the affair. Everyone knows about the affair, darling. Boom. With these few words, the rumor ceased to be a court whisper, confined to aristocratic salons, and became common knowledge in the public square. Coren, crushed by criticism and probably subjected to pressures we will never know, hastily deleted the tweet, but the damage was done. Pandora's box had been opened, and its toxic contents were spreading uncontrollably throughout the digital ecosystem. And this is where it gets really interesting, where the pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place alarmingly. Why is Giles Coren's name so important? Well, he wasn't just any random journalist, a newcomer looking for fame. He was and remains a key figure in the Soho House set. Imagine an exclusive cosmopolitan social circle where artists, journalists, aristocrats, and celebrities mingle. It was Meghan Markle's favorite playground. Soho House was not just a club for her, but a second home in London, her golden pass to rub shoulders with the cream of British society, a place where, with undeniable skill, she wove her network of contacts with journalists, influencers, and opinion makers. The connection was too obvious, too perfect to ignore. Soho House wasn't just a place, it was a hub, a stage where the seed of betrayal was supposedly sown, the ground zero of a conspiracy that was about to explode. But why? What would be Meghan's reason for allegedly inflicting such a personal and devastating blow on her own brother-in-law? To understand this, one must delve into the psychology of a woman who, from the moment she set foot in royal life, felt like a stranger in hostile territory. Meghan, a Hollywood actress, a self-made woman, suddenly found herself trapped in a 1,000-year-old institution that she didn't understand, and that, in her opinion, never understood her. It was a mechanism with unwritten rules, invisible protocols, and a hierarchy of blood that, no matter how hard she tried, she would never be able to head. From her perspective, she saw the British press adoring Kate, the perfect princess, the English Rose. She was praised for her grace, stoicism, and ability to never put a foot wrong. Every dress, every smile of Kate was celebrated as an act of patriotism. Meanwhile, her every gesture was scrutinized under a microscope of suspicion. She was portrayed as a demanding, cold, calculating, difficult duchess. This contrast, this dichotomy between saint and sinner, fueled a deep resentment, a wound that continued to bleed. She felt the anxiety of not fitting in, of being a superfluous piece in the puzzle, and when someone like Meghan, with her history of struggle and ambition, feels cornered, she doesn't give up. She fights, and according to royal experts, fights dirty. The narrative became, if I burn, I'll make sure the whole castle burns with me. In this context, the rumor about William and Rose was not just gossip, but a nuclear weapon in her arsenal. It was a way to drag the Golden Prince into the same mud in which she felt she herself had been immersed. It was a way of saying to the world, see, they're not so perfect. Their fairy tale has cracks too. It was her way of leveling a playing field that she felt had always been tilted against her. Meghan's alleged strategy, if this version of the story is to be believed, is a manual for guerrilla warfare in the media. Rule number 1, never attack head-on. Use intermediaries, plant ideas like seeds, and always retain the ability to deny everything. And this is where, my friends, one of the strangest and most telling episodes of this whole saga comes into play. It is said that at one of those exclusive Soho House events, where the walls have more ears than a cornfield, Meghan was seen having a lively conversation with a well-known food blogger, a foodie as they say now. A casual conversation, a glass of wine, nothing out of the ordinary, or so it seemed. Shortly thereafter, the same character, in a fit of alleged drunkenness, tweeted about the William and Rose affair, causing the story, which was already on the brink, to explode online again. Of course, he later retracted his words, claiming he was drunk and looking for trouble. Coincidence? Well, Meghan, who calls herself a foodie, ran her own successful lifestyle blog, Tig, and has always been a master of building relationships with bloggers and influencers to manage her image. Too many coincidences, don't you think? It's the perfect modus operandi. A casual conversation, an idea subtly planted in the right mind, and then a third party who seemingly spontaneously blurted it out. This allows the original instigator to remain in the shadows with impeccably clean hands, watching the fire from a safe distance. It's a textbook tactic, a whisper at the right table that turns into a deafening shout in the digital world. And again, the background scene is the same. Soho House. That hub, where Meghan's world and the media collided, a place where a casual comment could turn into a scandal of global proportions in a matter of hours. Very neat, right? The initial spark in the form of a tweet or a casual comment needed oxygen to turn into a conflagration, and that oxygen came in the form of a formidable and well-coordinated digital legion. Once the rumor was in the air, the so-called Sussex Squad, that legion of fervent and sometimes fanatical online defenders of Harry and Meghan, took care to amplify it endlessly. People were shocked. Suddenly, the hashtag about the alleged affair became a global trend. Anonymous but suspiciously well-informed accounts, with almost military synchronization, relentlessly promoted the narrative day and night. But the campaign didn't stay in the dark corners of Twitter. No, no, no. It crossed the Atlantic and landed on American television screens with fanfare. Host Stephen Colbert, on his hugely popular late-night show, couldn't resist the temptation to name Rose Hanbury live on air, forcing the Marchioness's legal team to issue statements and threaten lawsuits. Coincidence, please. For veteran palace watchers, Meghan's fingerprints were all over it. It was a coordinated attack on multiple fronts, a masterpiece of modern media warfare. First, the initial rumor, sown by an insider. Second, mass amplification by a dedicated fan base. And third, ultimate legitimization by major American media outlets, a field where Meghan felt much more comfortable, protected, and, above all, understood. It was the perfect storm, designed to inflict maximum damage with minimal direct trace back to its alleged instigator, and at the center of it all, Meghan, supposedly watching from her mansion in Montecito as the world, which she thought had mistreated her, was now writhing in the chaos that she had supposedly helped unleash. And while the digital world was burning in the quiet and luxurious halls of Kensington Palace, one person was breathing steam. And not without reason. William's anger, according to those who know him, is not explosive or theatrical like his brother's. No, no, no. It's a cold, restrained anger that makes no noise but freezes the air around it. For William, this wasn't just a sensational headline. It was a betrayal on the deepest and most personal level imaginable. Imagine a man who has spent his whole life under a microscope, who has seen with his own eyes how the press destroyed his mother, and who has therefore built an impenetrable steel wall around Kate and his children. Suddenly he was being dragged into the mud, not by some anonymous tabloid, but supposedly by his own sister-in-law. The betrayal was doubly painful precisely because it came from within his own family. It is said that he directly confronted Harry in one of those tense transatlantic calls, demanding to know why the Sussex side was fueling the fire instead of helping to put it out. Harry, as always defending himself, allegedly denied any involvement, but for William, the house of cards of trust had collapsed. The pattern of behavior, the connections, the moment chosen for the attack, everything told a very different story. Trust, that fragile thread that still bound the two brothers, had shattered into 1,000 pieces. How could he ever trust Harry again? How could he trust him with his fears or doubts, knowing that on the other end of the line was Meghan, supposedly leaking, manipulating, and inciting the most malicious rumors? For William, this was not about politics or PR, it was personal. His wife, his honor, and his future reign were at stake. And for a future king, that's unforgivable. Amid this royal battlefield, one figure found herself in the crossfire, not choosing to participate in the war. Rose Hanbury, the Marchioness of Cholmondeley. Overnight, her world changed completely. Her name, previously known only in the most exclusive aristocratic circles, became the subject of gossip for everyone from London tabloids to Los Angeles gossip shows. She became the involuntary heroine of an international scandal, a private person dragged into the cruelest and most ruthless spotlight. Imagine yourself in her place for a moment. A wife, a mother, a member of William and Kate's quiet circle of friends in Norfolk, seeing your life dissected, your reputation smeared, and your face plastered on scandalous supermarket headlines. And all this, supposedly, because Meghan Markle needed a distraction from her own bad press. Herein lies the true cruelty of the strategy, if it was a strategy. It doesn't matter who gets burned, what matters is deflecting attention from Meghan. It doesn't matter the dignity of Kate, the honor of William, or the reputation of Rose. They were collateral damage in her personal war, pawns on her chessboard. Rose's lawyers moved quickly to silence the rumors, issuing strong denials and threatening lawsuits. But the point is, Meghan supposedly knew something fundamental about the nature of modern media. Once a rumor sticks to your name, it can never be completely washed away. The stain, however pale, remains forever in the collective imagination. Rose Hanbury has thus become a silent victim of this story, a reminder of the human cost that power games in a golden cage have. Her story teaches us that in these modern wars of thrones, stray bullets can be just as deadly as direct attacks. On the other side of the board, Kate, the Princess of Wales, chose her most powerful weapon, dignified silence. While the tabloids and social media tried to drag her into the mud, portraying her as a silent and humiliated victim of an imaginary betrayal, she refused to dignify the speculation with even a word or a gesture. Instead, she appeared in public more radiant than ever, performing her duties with unflappable composure. Her serene smiles, her unwavering poise, and her dedication to her duties became the most eloquent and devastating response. Every public appearance was a silent statement, screaming, "I'm not participating in your circus, I'm above that." For many, Kate became the perfect contrast to Meghan. Dignity versus drama, class versus chaos, calm versus storm. And as is often the case in these stories, the public adores the wronged but elegant heroine. Public sympathy overwhelmingly leaned in her favor, not only in Great Britain but around the world. She was not just a future queen, she was a woman who endured attacks with a grace that seemed almost supernatural, defending her SES. The irony is delightful and cruel at the same time. Meghan, presumably playing the role of the story's villain, inadvertently wrote the perfect script for Kate to shine as the heroine. The attempt to humiliate Kate only elevated her further, reminding the public why they see her as an anchor of stability and a true jewel of the crown. Her silence was not a sign of weakness, not at all. It was a demonstration of absolute power, the kind of power that doesn't need to shout to be heard. If the relationship between William and Harry was already on life support after Megxit, the interview with Oprah and the publication of Spare were the final nails in the coffin. Trust didn't just evaporate, it was annihilated. For William, the concept of brotherhood, forged in the shared tragedy of his mother's death, is based on unconditional loyalty, especially in the face of external threats. But what do you do when the threat supposedly comes from your own brother? The structure of their relationship completely collapsed. Calls, it is said, became strained and sporadic, full of awkward pauses and veiled accusations. Any possibility of genuine reconciliation, of returning to being just Willie and Harold, vanished in the toxic air of distrust. And how could Kate forgive Meghan? The woman who wanted to be her sister is now supposedly implicated in dragging her name and her marriage through the mud. Meghan's actions screamed not only of envy, they were an act of sabotage in the truest sense of the word. The famous golden cage of the royal family, already oppressive, had turned into a minefield, and every misstep could trigger a new crisis. This incident was not just a family squabble, it marked a point of no return, a red line that, once crossed, could not be uncrossed. The Fab Four, that ephemeral hope for a modern and united monarchy, which caught on for a few months, had become a bitter memory, a symbol of what could have been and never was. The rift between the brothers was no longer just a crack, it was an insurmountable abyss, a void that no future apology could fill. The British monarchy, often described by the cold business term, the firm, has not lasted 1,000 years by accident. When it senses a threat, its survival machine, honed by centuries of intrigue, betrayal, and scandal, springs into action. And this time, the threat was internal, making it doubly dangerous. The palace's response was not a furious press release full of exclamation points. Or was it? That would have been too vulgar, too Hollywood. The reaction was much more subtle and therefore deadly. Anonymous but strategically chosen sources began leaking small portions of information to trusted journalists. Suddenly, as if by magic, old stories about Meghan's past surfaced, petty reminders of her ambitions, her alleged contradictions, and her treatment of staff. At the same time, every public appearance of William and Kate was orchestrated to perfection to create an image of unity, duty, and unwavering stability. It was a silent counteroffensive, a guerrilla war waged on the pages of newspapers and on television programs. It is said William gave the green light to his aides to increase the pressure, and when the future King of England decides to apply pressure, he doesn't do it with primetime interviews, but with carefully measured waves of information, with quotes from family friends that mysteriously appear in the right newspapers, with a communication strategy that isolates the opponent without having to name them. The machine doesn't need to shout, it just needs the right ears to change the course of the narrative. Meghan may have started the fire, but now she was facing an institution that controlled not only the water and the wind, but also the map of the terrain. And at the center of this storm, increasingly isolated and lost, is Prince Harry. His image is perhaps the most tragic of all. Next to Meghan, his silence makes him an accomplice. Does anyone really believe he knew nothing about the PR strategies that were unfolding? His passivity, while his wife allegedly attacks his brother, makes him cowardly at best and vindictive at worst. But what could he do? Publicly defending William would have made him a traitor in Meghan's eyes, the woman for whom he left his country, his family, and his former life. He was trapped in a maze with no way out, which he himself helped build. A dark alley where every door he opens leads only to a smaller room with less air. The man who was once Britain's most beloved prince, a brave soldier, a fun-loving brother, is now reduced to a figure watching from afar as the last bridges that could bring him home burn. Each new scandal, each attack on his family, erases a little more of the respect he once had. He left in search of freedom, but seems to have found a new cage, perhaps more luxurious, but no less suffocating. A cage where his loyalties are constantly tested, and where every choice he makes seems to be the wrong one. The irony is bitter and profound. In a desperate attempt to escape his brother's shadow, he has become, for many, the shadow of his own wife, losing his voice and identity in the process. A real pity. Meghan may have thought her move was a power play in pure Hollywood style, where scandal often turns into attention, and attention into money. But even in the capital of cinema, this move has begun to be perceived as an act of desperation. Industry actors, producers, heads of major studios have begun to whisper at parties and business lunches. Dragging the future King of England into the mire of tabloid rumors is not only tasteless, but risky. Major brands and production companies, already nervous about the Sussexes' falling popularity and their high-profile failures on Netflix and Spotify, have become even more cautious. Because, let's be honest, associating your multi-billion-dollar brand with a campaign to discredit the British monarchy doesn't scream safe investment. It smells of toxicity. For Meghan, who had hoped to reinvent herself as a lifestyle guru, a mix of Martha Stewart and Gwyneth Paltrow with a royal twist, this scandal could be the final nail in the coffin. The Queen of Gossip strikes again, but this time the crown she so craved is slipping from her grasp faster than she thinks. Hollywood doesn't forgive a lack of success, of course, but it forgives even less being bad for business. And Meghan, with her constant family drama, has begun to be seen as a toxic asset, a star whose shine only illuminates the scandal she supposedly creates. The golden dream of California began to crack, and the cold wind of irrelevance seeped through them. The irony of this whole saga is how Meghan's alleged strategy to weaken the image of golden boy William backfired in the most spectacular way. It exploded in her face. The public, far from turning against William, rallied around him and Kate with a fierce, almost tribal loyalty. Social media, this modern battlefield, lit up with posts calling the accusations vile and mean-spirited. Even old critics of the monarchy, those who would normally enjoy a good royal scandal, disagreed with Meghan's supposed meddling, saying it was unfair and cruel to drag Kate, who was already under immense pressure, into this toxic game. The narrative changed with the speed of light. It was no longer about William's alleged scandal, but about Meghan's apparent obsession with overthrowing others to elevate herself. And that's a recurring theme, isn't it? Every time Meghan feels the focus waning, that her relevance is diminishing, a new wave of rumors, accusations, or complaints emerges, conveniently timed. It's such a predictable pattern that it's almost sad. This time the bullet was aimed straight at William's chest, but here's the unexpected twist. William isn't Harry. He doesn't get drawn into chaotic and emotional public fights, and he doesn't give up. The boomerang that Meghan launched with force returned with unexpected speed, hitting her right in the forehead, leaving her target not only unharmed, but, paradoxically, stronger and more loved than before. Yeah, right, dear. There's something almost Shakespearean in the way this tragedy of errors unfolded. The more Meghan supposedly tried to tarnish William's reputation, the stronger, more solid, more majestic he seemed. The more mud she threw in Kate's direction, the cleaner and more flawless she appeared in the eyes of the world, as if each of her attacks, each of her poisoned whispers, only polished the brilliance of her opponents, reminding the public why they admire them. The same weapon she tried to use against William by fate became a dagger aimed back at her own heart. She's not harming the future king, she's destroying herself brick by brick. The public sees not a suspicious prince, but a bitter and seemingly vindictive woman. The international press is increasingly presenting this not as a royal affair scandal, but as Meghan versus William. And in that battle, let's be honest, she doesn't stand a chance. This is the law of unintended consequences at its greatest and most brutal expression. In her attempt to rewrite the narrative to portray herself as a victim heroine, a woman who escaped an oppressive institution, she has only reinforced her role as the story's villain. A tragic figure, no doubt, driven by a supposed envy that consumes her and blinds her to her own inevitable self-destruction. What a move! Here lies the fundamental difference between William and Meghan, and perhaps between old European aristocracy and new Californian celebrity. Meghan plays for tomorrow's headlines, for the 24-hour news cycle, for the trends. William plays for the history books. He doesn't react to the chaos of the moment with an impulsive tweet or a tearful interview. He acts with a calm, almost icy precision, always thinking about the legacy, about the institution, about the crown. It's a lesson he probably learned by watching his late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, for decades, a master in the art of the long game. The golden rule is simple. When you are harassed, stay calm. When you are attacked, demonstrate unwavering dignity. Let the storm pass. knowing that the institution, like a 1,000-year-old mountain, is stronger and more enduring than any fleeting scandal. If Meghan thought she could throw some mud and get away with it, she seriously underestimated her opponent and the machine that supports him. William is not reactive like his younger brother. He is strategic, with his eye always on the throne. And if Meghan's name continues to appear alongside these offensive rumors, she may find that she is not only excluded from Hollywood, but also officially ostracized from any remaining royal connections she clings to so desperately. In the end, Meghan is fighting for attention, William is fighting for history, and history, my friends, always favors the one who holds the crown firmly on their head. Even when the wind blew fiercely, the public's reaction was immediate and vehement. It was a wave of outrage, but here's what's interesting. It wasn't against William. The tide turned against Meghan with devastating force. Comment after comment on social media accused her of vindictiveness, jealousy, and a desperate desire to destroy the very institution she had once tried but failed to conquer. And then, of course, came the professional commentators. The British tabloids, who don't need much of a reason to sharpen their knives, had a real feast. Headlines screamed about Meghan's low blows, while royal experts, sitting in television studios, dissected her alleged motives live on air. Even the American press, which had once adored her as a modern icon, began to change its tone. Morning show hosts, her once biggest defenders, now raised eyebrows, wondering aloud why Meghan continued to attack William and Kate instead of focusing on building her own brand in California. A PR expert rather cruelly compared her to a schoolyard bully throwing stones from behind a fence, hoping no one would notice where they were coming from. But you know what? Everyone noticed. Everyone saw that she was supposedly muddying the waters to create gossip, and this time the pot boiled over on her, not her target. The move simply didn't work out as expected. The conflict can be seen as a fundamental tactical battle, almost by military textbook. William's destructive silence against Meghan's constant noise. While she was supposedly orchestrating leaks, whispering in the right ears, and moving her pieces on the media chessboard, William responded with the most powerful weapon of all: no response. His silence was more eloquent than any official statement and sharper than any explosive interview. Every act of public service he performed, every calm smile he shared with Kate, every moment of fulfilled duty to the nation became a silent but relentless rebuttal. His attitude said, "I am the heir, I am stable, I am the future." And all of Meghan's media noise in comparison became just noise, a fleeting disturbance, a storm in a teacup. Behind the impenetrable walls of the palace, insiders claimed that there were intense and lengthy discussions about how to respond to the provocation. Not because William feared the rumors, he knows his position is strong, but because this kind of discrediting campaign, if left unchecked, could set a dangerous precedent. It could give Meghan license to continue attacking whenever she feels marginalized or in need of attention. And William is not willing to let her or anyone else rewrite the narrative of his marriage or his role as future king. He knows that in this war of attrition, the one who demonstrates more endurance and self-control wins. And in that arena, Meghan is no match for a man raised in the cold and disciplined shadow of duty. And there's a curious, almost poetic detail mentioned in the chronicles of this turbulent period: the move of the Wales family from Adelaide Cottage to Forest Lodge. Officially, of course, practical and logistical reasons were cited, but some sharp-eyed observers, those who know how to read between the lines, whispered that Adelaide Cottage had become a house for the Waleses because it was not haunted by ghosts of the past, but too fresh with memories of toxicity. It was a house they inhabited during the most acute and painful period of the war with the Sussexes, a house whose walls witnessed tense conversations, tears, and the feeling of being constantly under siege. The move, therefore, symbolized much more than just a relocation. It was a deep burning desire to start fresh, to leave behind the drama and negativity that clung to the walls. It was a way to close a chapter and step away, both physically and symbolically, from the orbit of chaos that seemed to surround Harry and Meghan across the Atlantic. The house may or may not have been haunted, but the memory of betrayal and conflict had poisoned the air, turning what should have been a home into a constant reminder of familial fracture. For William and Kate, in their relentless pursuit of a semblance of normalcy for their children, a fresh start was needed. a sanctuary away from the shadows of the past and the painful fratricidal war that had forever left its mark on their lives. The damage for Meghan wasn't just reputational, it was that it had begun to affect what is ostensibly most important to her, her personal brand. In the competitive and often cutthroat circles of Hollywood, whispers have begun to circulate that Meghan's constant obsession with the Windsors has begun to cost her credibility in the business. Producers and studio executives, the very people who pull the strings of money and influence, don't want to touch projects that might be overshadowed by her never-ending family drama. One insider, one of those straight talkers speaking on condition of anonymity, put it bluntly, "Every time Meghan's name trends on social media, it's never because of her work, it's always because of some new royal feud." And that, my friends, isn't exactly the kind of PR you want. When you're trying to build a global empire of lifestyle brands, documentaries, and multi-million-dollar podcast deals, investors, the people who put up the money, want stability and predictability, not soap opera scandals that could erupt at any moment. But Meghan apparently cannot resist reaching into her old bag of tricks, the tactics that helped her become known in the first place. The empire she dreamed of building on the foundation of her royal title now teeters on the unstable ground of scandals, grievances, and an increasingly negative public perception. The house of cards she so meticulously constructed has begun to crumble. Meanwhile, cracks in the facade of the perfect Montecito couple have begun to appear. Behind the scenes, behind the calculated smiles for photo ops, insiders, those anonymous sources who always seem to know everything, are whispering that Harry is exhausted, tired of constantly being on the defensive, tired of being drawn into Meghan's endless battles, tired, perhaps, of losing the last vestiges of respect and affection he once held in the UK. Meghan may be the spark that ignites the flame, but Harry has always been the fuel, and the thing about fuel is that it runs out quickly. His loyalty, once fierce and unwavering, the kind that drove him to defy his family and his country, is beginning to show the inevitable wear and tear of reality. He might have defended Meghan against the Windsors in the past, seeing her as a victim of the palace machine. But defending her now against William, against his own brother, when the evidence of her alleged meddling is so plain for all to see, is becoming increasingly difficult and morally ambiguous. The irony is bitter, almost poisonous. The very person who once severed ties with his family to protect Meghan may now be realizing that it is Meghan who cannot or will not stop severing those ties deeper and deeper until there is nothing left to bind them. It's the story of a prince who just wanted to be loved, and in the pursuit of love may have lost everything. The royal family is now closing ranks. Like a Roman legion forming a testudo, the palace walls have become impenetrable. Aides and courtiers are reportedly strategizing to legally suppress Meghan's smear tactics. There are whispers of official rebuttals, even defamation lawsuits. Something the monarchy, with its traditional never complain, never explain policy, considers less and less, unless they feel truly cornered. William isn't just angry, he seems to have stopped playing nice. And when a future king like William decides to go on the offensive, Meghan may learn what real power, true power, really looks like. Because the British monarchy isn't a Hollywood PR firm that can be bullied into submission with the threat of bad press. It's centuries of tradition, power, and survival, backed by an iron wall of influence, money, and a global loyalty that is often underestimated. Meghan may be loud, and she may have the megaphone of the American media, but William, as we are about to learn, is inevitable. A red line has been crossed, and the repercussions could be far more severe than Meghan ever imagined. In the end, this messy and exhausting episode has served a purpose. It has reminded the world who truly wears the crown. And I'm not talking about a crown of jewels and velvet, but the invisible crown of dignity, fortitude, and the trust of a nation. In her attempt to manufacture scandal, Meghan has only reminded the world who truly embodies the values of the monarchy she so vehemently rejected. William, while certainly enraged by the personal attacks, emerges from the ashes stronger, his dignity intact, his bond with Kate unbreakable in the public eye. Meghan, however, has once again revealed herself as a figure perceived by many as reckless, vindictive, and blind to her own accelerating self-destruction. And Harry? Well, Harry remains a tragic figure. A sad prince caught in the middle, watching as the woman he has tirelessly defended against all odds now drags his family, and perhaps his own future, into ever deeper turmoil. If this story teaches us anything, it is that the crown does not lie on the head of the one who shouts the loudest, but on the head of the one who knows when to remain silent. And that crown, whether we like it or not, sits firmly on William's head, no matter how many stones Meghan tries to throw from across the ocean. And so, as the dust of the media battle slowly settles, one thing has become undeniable. Meghan Markle may have thought she was playing a high-stakes game of chess, skillfully maneuvering her pieces, but in reality, to many observers, she's simply flipping the board every time she realizes she's losing. In the end, her alleged attempt to shake the House of Windsor with whispers of infidelity hasn't left William broken and the monarchy in ruins. It's left her looking desperate. And in the cruel and unforgiving world of royalty and public reputation, desperation is the kiss of death. The story, of course, will fade, as all scandals do, swallowed up by the next news cycle. But the damage to Meghan's image is, quite possibly, irreversible. She wanted ostensibly to drag William down into the mud. Instead, she has only sunk deeper into it herself. And if there is one thing the palace and its machine never forget, it's betrayal. Meghan may have lit the fire, but it is William, with his silence and institutional power, who will ensure that it is she who burns with it. Because in the battle for public sympathy, the most important of all, she has officially lost. William and Kate emerge from this crisis unscathed, their public image strengthened, their popularity soaring. Meanwhile, Meghan is left alone, holding the smoking gun that everyone, absolutely everyone, saw her fire. The final lesson of this saga is simple, yet brutal. When you declare war on a future king, you had better not miss.